Good evening, everyone, and welcome to those of you who have already signed in. And we're on 97. That number's increasing all the time. We're still expecting a few more people, but I think I'm going to begin now. Derby, that's all right if I begin, or do you want to give
Yeah,
it 5 minutes?
no, I think we can kick off. Numbers are climbing as you speak, so
Okay,
maybe just start off slowly.
all right. Well, I'll start by saying this is a very unusual webinar for the Western Cape Forum for Intellectual Disability. For a start, our sessions are usually in the morning on a Wednesday. But as Stratfin pointed out, that's not a very convenient time for parents. So we decided to host this in the evening because we wanted to reach parents who don't make up the bulk of our members. But I did want to take this opportunity to point out that all of those Wednesday morning webinars are actually recorded. And if you zoom on over to our website and have a little scoot around under training, you will see that you can find a whole archive of these webinars and you can request them. And our members only pay 50 Rand to view a webinar. There's a little screenshot of just the first screen that you will see of subjects that are available. I'm very pleased to say that tonight's subject is offered for free, and so we thank Stratfin for that. We really work hard to keep our training as reasonable as possible so that we can reach as many people as we can. Because the forum is a support network for the intellectual disability community. And our members come from various places: special care centers, group homes, day centers, protected workplaces, schools, medical professionals, and family members. So if any of you are new to us and would like to become a member, you're welcome to go onto our website and find our membership form. Now, as our name suggests, the Western Cape Forum for Intellectual Disability, we're based in the Western Cape, but our vision is for a South Africa where all people with intellectual disability live with the dignity that our Constitution confirms. So the person with intellectual disability is at the heart of all our work. And our mission is to support the service providers within this community so that people with intellectual disability are able to live and experience a better quality of life. And this workshop and our training, all of our other training, forms part of that mission. So apart from our training, we have our advocacy branch, which is very active and aims to ensure that the government amends laws and allocates resources so that people with intellectual disability are able to realize their full rights. Our main focus is on the right to basic education, but it's not limited to that. Now, there's a little picture on this slide, you'll see there. That's an example of a more interesting kind of advocacy. The lady in red is a self-advocate. So she is an adult with intellectual disability who has attended training in self-advocacy, and there she is representing people with disability at the Zico's Disability Awareness event. She's accompanied by our director on the left. And then I'll say a little bit more about our training. So we have several sessions each year where we provide skills and knowledge for caregivers and professionals to help them better support the person with the disability in their life. And in fact, it was at a recent support session for parents where one of the parents mentioned that she feels penalized as the mother of three children with disabilities because she has so much admin in her life, and that includes her tax burden. And I just thought to myself, it's really unfortunate that in many of life's most emotionally demanding situations, we tend to face an increased burden of financial costs and an increased burden of new administrative costs. And so we're hoping tonight that this session is going to provide some relief with the tax admin and with hopefully recouping little costs for our parents. So that's what we're hoping for tonight. We also have an arm of resource development. There is an example of one of the books that we have produced over the years, but we have many more on our website. I'll just flash a few on the screen, and we're continually developing them. Now, there are lots of you out there that I have never met before. So just to give you a little more of a feel for us, I'm going to share a photo of our board on the left-hand side and our staff on the right-hand side. Without them, none of this could happen. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Dobie.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I just noticed my internet was a bit shaky. I'm just going to work on a backup internet. One second.
And I'll kill my video.
Okay, let me share over here the screen. There we go. Um, okay, let me just share this quickly. There we go. I'm also just going to change my internet. You might lose me for one second. And um, do you think that internet will be more stable? Okay, you know what we're gonna do? If we run into a problem, Jenna, who's hosting the webinar, will call me and I'll switch internet. But let's kick off with this. And I'll just want to first of all thank Melanie and her team. Together, you heard on my team for putting this incredible evening together. And Melanie, you definitely hit home with your point of the financial burden and the admin burden that can come together with navigating disability is immense, and that's something that I've seen personally in my own life. I've got a child navigating neurodiversity, word retrieval, and different sort of learning challenges, and without the financial help from the tax incentives, really it's so limiting when you come in to give your loved ones the best shot at the education and in their day-to-day needs when navigating intellectual disability. So I named it Stop Missing Out on Medical Tax Refunds because I've noticed from conversations with regular people which aren't accountants, but even accountants and even medical aid brokers, how uneducated uh, um, families in South Africa are when it comes to medical rebates. And for whatever reason that is, that's the reality. But there's a lot of misconception. And tonight we're going to discuss exactly what you can claim, who qualifies, and how at Stratfin we help families navigate these claims. So a little bit about Stratfin. Stratfin was founded in 2018 by Ilan Rabinowitz with 20 years of tax experience, and he's put together a couple of brilliant angles and solutions to maximize taxes. The solution we're going to be discussing tonight is our medical tax back, which is hands down the solution that most of our team's about a team of 20 of us with 3 CAs, and most of the team are dealing with medical tax claims, and it's definitely the hands down the best opportunity as a taxpayer in South Africa to maximize. Often as taxpayers, we look at retirement annuity, we look at Section 18As for charity donations, But in many cases, those aren't applicable because not everyone has the luxury of being able to give charity to PBOs, and not everyone has the luxury of being able to put away a retirement annuity. But a medical refund is something that every family in South Africa is entitled to, and should really make sure that they are maximizing. I'm going to go into a little bit of theory around medical tax rebates and how they work without disabilities, and then what happens when there is a disability, how it completely changes the game. So, the first step is just to understand the the Income Tax Act when it comes to medical rebates. And like I said, this is without disability. And already over here, there's going to be opportunities that people are missing out on. And if you do lose me in the theory and in the detail, the take homes will be very clear. So not to worry. But I think it is important just to really get a good understanding of how it all works. And then we can talk about how disabilities just completely changes the game and increases those rebates by so much more. So what happens is as follows. Any taxpayer in South Africa that incurs medical bills is entitled to a portion of those medical bills back when they do their tax return. So, for example, let's just say there's a family of four, and they've got um, a medical aid plan. Let's say their medical aid plan is, uh, let's just keep numbers round, 10,000 Rand a month for the full family. And then they also have out of pocket expenses, maybe another 2,000 Rand a month. So that's a total of 10 times 12 is 120,000 Rand. Between the tax year starting with March 2025 and ending in Feb 2026, that's the last financial year that we just had, called the 2026 financial year. And now in July, you've got an opportunity to get to do a tax return and get a portion of those expenses back. Those those uh, those expenses are given back in two parts of the Income Tax Act: your Section 6A and your Section 6B. Your Section 6A is a very simple formula, and it basically works as follows. If you are on a medical aid, per member that's on the medical aid, you get on average 300 Rand back per month. So take our family of four, there's four members, that's 300 Rand times 4, 1,200 Rand times 12 months, 14,400 Rand that they will get back when they do their tax return. And then in their Section 6B, this now goes into a percentage that you can get back of how much money you actually spent. And that's where the formula starts becoming a little bit more complicated. And what they're looking at in your Section 6B is how much did you spend on your medical aid premium, and how much did you spend on your out-of-pocket expenses? And then they're also looking at how much you earn. The more a person earns, the less of a rebate SARS will give you back. And this is once again, this is before disability. When there is disability in the family, this rule changes. And already over here, I see families missing out on medical rebates for the following reason. Firstly, sometimes the main member of the medical aid is not a taxpayer. So we've had many cases where the main member was the one spouse who was maybe looking after the family, and the other spouse was the taxpayer, and because the medical aid was in the one spouse's name, the spouse who wasn't paying who wasn't earning and paying tax when it came to tax season, SARS didn't put the two together, and therefore the family lost out on a rebate. And therefore, it's very, very important to double check that you are getting the rebate, double check that your medical aid scheme is feeding that information to SARS, that it is showing on your profile. Over the past few years, more and more people are being auto-assessed, which means that they don't need to do a tax return. SARS do the tax return for them. And it's important to double check that SARS have captured your medical aid tax certificate. On your medical aid tax certificate is both your medical aid contribution monthly as well as your out-of-pocket expenses. And therefore, because because your Medicaid tax certificate captures all that data, it is so, so important to always submit everything to the Medicaid. And here's another opportunity where I see people miss out on. For example, in my family, we're on a hospital plan. We are family of um, we're a family of four, and um, and what happens is um, because we're paying for speech and OT and all these type of expenses that uh, all these type of expenses which we know the Medicare doesn't cover because we're on a hospital plan. Now, what a lot of people are doing is they won't submit it to the Medicaid, which is a big mistake because even though the Medicaid won't cover it, it's important to still submit it so that the Medicaid can serve as your personal logbook for all your medical spend, and then SARS will give you a percentage of that back. So just to clarify, there's two take homes that I've already mentioned. Number one is every taxpayer in South Africa gets a medical rebate, and make sure you are getting the medical rebate. And important to always do the calculation of who should be the main member, because the main member, that the taxpayer should normally be the main member, but there are variables even within that. And then number two, always keep always keep all your medical spend, because even if your medical aid won't cover it, by submitting it to the medical aid, you now are you now your medical aid is now keeping log of all your expenses. At the end of the financial year, they're going to feed that information to SARS, and SARS will give you a percentage back. And one more take home before we discuss disability medical rebates is that if you're paying for a parent's medical aid or a child's medical aid, but they're not on your medical aid plan, so perhaps they're already over the age of 21 and it's more financially viable for them to be on their own plan, and you're the one who's paying for it, you are now entitled to a medical rebate on those expenses as well. So very important to make sure that you are maximizing on your medical rebates. And we haven't even started the exciting part of the webinar. What happens is as follows. And I know tonight we're discussing intellectual disability, but I'm going to go into all six categories that SARS recognize as disability, because even though uh, even though we are focusing on intellectual, you may have family or friends which have got family members navigating other medical conditions, which SARS will accept as a qualifying disability or impairment or medical condition. SARS's definition of disability is very different to what commonly people refer to as disability. Often you'll use the word disability and people think you're talking about someone who's in a wheelchair or bedridden, but when it comes to disability, and I'm sure this is um, a very spoken about topic at uh, at the Western Cape of Intellectual Disability Organization, because what qualifies for disability doesn't need to be so extreme. SARS's definition of disability is a moderate limitation in someone's day-to-day life in one of their main activities. And that can be whether socially or intellectually, um, socially or in the work environment or in the school environment. If someone is limited moderately too severely in a day-to-day life in one of these six categories, for SARS, that qualifies as a disability, and that will unlock a huge amount of financial relief when you're doing your tax return. So we're going to go into the different categories and examples in the different categories. And then once we've got a good understanding of that, we're then going to go into what then happens when you're doing your tax return. So the first category is intellectual, and over here you have all your remedial learners and anything else that falls under intellectual limitation. Many cases of autism would qualify under intellectual, and there's many other examples which could qualify. Vision, this obviously needs to be a real limitation even after you've gotten your best pair of glasses and you've been to the best optometrist and you still are limited in your vision. Communication, yeah, you can have apraxia, word retrieval. Really, anytime a person is limited and isn't communicating what they were trying to say in the same way as other people would, and therefore holding back, whether talking up in a meeting, talking up in the classroom, interacting socially, and they've got a barrier to their communication. It can even be a lisp that they are self-conscious about, and therefore they're avoiding communication. That would definitely be a moderate limitation in their day-to-day life in the communication. Physical, here you can have sleep apnea, you can have cancer, any mobility issues. So I say any limitation in one of your upper limbs. So even if someone has moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis and now is unable to drive or unable to walk long distances, anything like that could qualify as a disability when it comes to medical tax refunds. In your mental health, here you have ADHD, anxiety, depression, and many other bipolar, and many other examples can be very limiting in people's day-to-day life. Lastly, hearing loss. If there's anytime there's even minor hearing loss, especially in children, there's a difference between the hearing loss that qualifies for children and adults, and also depends if it's both ears or 1 year. But once again, you'll go to the medical professional, and they will advise you exactly whether you do qualify or don't qualify. And that really applies for all of these categories. At the end of the day, you need a medical professional to sign off on the SARS form saying that this person is being limited in their day-to-day life. And even when it comes to medical professionals, I've seen a lot of miseducation where they read the form and the top word on the form says disability, and they say 1 second, you're not disabled, you're not in a wheelchair, you're not bedridden, and that's a massive mistake. And I think it's um, maybe I shouldn't use this word, but to me that could be criminal for a medical professional to just write off a case just because they haven't stopped to read the fine print of the exact tax act of what does qualify as disability. And there's many examples which do qualify as disabilities, which a lot of medical professionals aren't fully educated in. Sorry if I got a little controversial there. But yeah, I was a bit controversial, but I am going to say at the end of the day, I understand the tax and the financial part of it. And, at the end of the day, a medical professional who reads the form and takes the time to educate themselves, they are the only ones which can give that final word whether a person does qualify or doesn't qualify. I have no right to uh, to to say whether a person does qualify or doesn't qualify. I can only say I'd recommend going to see if a medical professional agrees. So that's important for me just to say that. Okay, now we've discussed what does qualify. A medical limitation, a moderate medical limitation in one's day-to-day life would qualify. Now what happens is as follows, and this is really the magic. If there's one person in the family with this medical condition, what happens is as follows. SARS will now do two things. One is they don't discriminate against high earners, and irrespective of your earning bracket, you'll be eligible to the maximum medical refund, as well as that medical refund jumps from about 10-11% to 33% of all your medical spend. So what happens is you've identified there's someone in the family who's got either mom, dad, or one of the children, and it can expand also sometimes to other family members that you're taking care of. That does get a little bit tricky, but definitely if it's in the immediate family, if you have identified that there's someone in the family who would qualify under SARS's definition of impairment or disability or medical condition, it will now unlock a refund of 33% of all your medical expenses. Now, when we talk about all your medical expenses, number one is your medical aid contribution. And once again, this will be on your medical aid tax certificate, and SARS will see it right there. Number two, your out-of-pocket expenses. And once again, if you've submitted your OT and your speech and your psychology and psychiatrists, if you've submitted all of that to your medical aid, even if the medical aid didn't cover for it, it will be on your out-of-pocket expenses, and it will be on that medical aid tax certificate, which is fed directly to SARS, and you'll now be eligible for 33% of those expenses. So going back to our example, a family of four paying 10,000 Rand on their medical aid, plus another 2,000 Rand out-of-pocket expenses, and that's a total of 144,000 Rand. And instead of getting back 14,000 Rand, this family is now eligible to 33% of 144, which is roughly 48,000 Rand, which is a massive jump. And really, when you're trying to give your family the best shot at a medical professional help, and you know that you can get 33% of that back, it really is a massive game changer. The next thing that happens, and this is also magic. School fees is always seen as an education expense, not a medical spend. But if your child or someone else in the family goes to a remedial school or to an institution or any other medical spend that's related to the medical condition, so a home or any sort of institution that you're now paying fees for, they will now be viewed as a medical spend. So take the same family who's spending 144,000 Rand on their medical spend for the medical aid contribution, their out-of-pocket expenses, and now say they're paying an additional 6,000 Rand for a remedial school. What SARS will now do is they'll say, okay, fine, schooling in the area at a government school would commonly cost 1,000 Rand. You are now paying 6,000 Rand. That's a 5,000 Rand difference per month. So a total of 60,000 Rand additional spend per year. And SARS will now give you back 33% of that 60,000 Rand. So there's another 20,000 Rand, which SARS will now give you back. And once again, when you want to give your child the best shot education, and I know many of the remedial schools which are charging an absolute fortune. There's schools in my area which are charging over 20,000 Rand per month for remedial assistance. And this can really make a massive difference knowing that you can fund that through these medical tax reliefs. Another opportunity that I see people are missing out on is travel. Obviously, travel commonly is not a medical spend, but if the remedial school, the institution, or the travel to a doctor for the medical spend is a significant travel, more than 10 kilometers from your home, SARS will now say, okay, your travel as well is going to be viewed as a medical travel, and you can now get back 33% of the AA rate of the travel that you've incurred. So there's actually an easy way to work this out. You go to the AA website, you put in your car, your model, you work out the AA rate, and then you can screenshot the travel between your home and the school. You times it by the day of the year, to school, back from school, to school, back from school, and that can create an easy logbook for you, and you can get back 33% of that. Also massive. Other examples of medical spend, which is often overlooked, obviously, if there's a carer, if there's a scribe, a facilitator, or any type of expense that is linked to an intellectual disability, even if it's oftentimes people with intellectual disability can find other expenses like needing nappies for many more years of their life at night, or other sort of examples. I was speaking to a mom today, whose child is struggling with type of autism, and there's just so many other expenses which have come up because of that struggle. So really the there's no real limitation as long as it's a spend that's aligned together with the medical condition. A creative one which I came up with earlier this year was my daughter's speech therapist was very insistent that we didn't drop speech therapy over the 6-week December holidays. And I wasn't going to try to get my daughter onto a Zoom while we tour in Cape Town. Very lovely place to be. For those of you who are from Cape Town, I am jealous. and my parents did recently move there, so I'm even more jealous. But so the speech therapist advised to download this very expensive speech therapy software, and together that we also need to get an iPad for it. And now those expenses can now be expenses which relate to the medical condition. You get a letter from the speech therapist saying that you need a iPad and you need the software. You keep those expenses and you can now claim back 33% of that. So that's also very lacquer. There are going to be time for Q&A at the end, so please, as I'm talking, just in the Q&A, just type out your question and we'll get there shortly. Uh, Lastly, what sets us apart at Stratfin? So I've been driving this business for some time now. As I mentioned, it's very close to home. I really enjoy finances, and oftentimes finances and medical sit in two different worlds, but when they do correlate, it's quite remarkable and can really open up a lot. And in my time specializing in disability tax is what it's called, we've picked up a couple of brilliant tricks. And the first brilliant trick is that we do a backdated claim. So every family that comes forward, they come forward with autism. Their child just started out in grade one in a school. And the first thing I do is, okay, 1 second, will definitely help you for what are you 2026 when your child joined the school. Just gonna note that my internet's unstable. I hope that you guys can hear me. Autism started when the child was born, and we can go back 3 years and rectify and collect all those additional medical spend that was left on the table the last 3 years. That's the first trick. The second thing we do is we have a holistic approach and we look at what mom's earning, look at what dad's earning, and we make sure we do the claim in where we can get the most favorable outcome. So, for example, sometimes we'll split the claim. Other times, we actually had a family that the main member of the medical aid was the mom, and the mom wasn't paying any tax, and this family had 3 children in remedial schools, um, and the claim was just absolutely massive. And what we managed to do, we managed to reverse everything that happened in the mom's name, redo it in the dad's name, and recovered over a few 100,000 rand. So, but by just having a holistic approach and seeing where can you get the more favorable outcome, who should we do the claim under? Mom, dad, split it, maybe do school in the mom's name and do the medical aid in the dad's name. Really, where can you get the most favorable outcome? And it's very, very important to do that to make sure that you maximize. And lastly, um, firsthand, I've experienced how difficult the admin process can be, especially when you're not familiar with it, and especially when you're not great with admin, which is like myself. And on top of that, you're also navigating neurodiversity. Um, so, so the admin can really, really be a killer. And what we do is we assign a client manager who's mandated to handhold our clients through the process from A to Z, talk to the school, get exactly what's necessary from the school, the letter, the bank statements, the statement of accounts from the school, direct you to the medical aid, find that, pre-fill the SARS form for you, write a letter for the doctor explaining exactly what they're signing and why, in our opinion, it would qualify, and then just help through that process. We've had many cases where SARS, depending on which area of disability you claiming under, they are often specific about who can sign off the form. So we guard that, and we've really had a lot of experience in putting that claim together to get it right the first time. And then, even then, SARS obviously don't like paying out. And then we take over and we play ping pong with SARS and get that claim over the line. We've got a team of about six people who've got a lot of experience in tax and just deal with correspondence with SARS all day, every day, playing ping pong until SARS have got no option but to pay out those claims. So that's what we do. And Obviously, this is an info webinar. No one's obliged to use our service. If you do want to use our service, there will be a WhatsApp which will go out afterwards with exact prompts. You just follow the prompts and you'll be helped. And in terms of our fee is 20% of success. So if we claim 50,000 Rand for family, the family will keep 40 and we'll then invoice 10. And it's completely at risk. So everyone's welcome to engage. If there's no refund, you'll never see an invoice from us. So really it's just a nice way to just be able to engage. If you haven't yet submitted your 2026 tax return, um, you can you can still include this if you have submitted your tax return or if you've been auto assessed. It's not a problem at all. As I mentioned, we do a backdated claim. We can do the claim any time of year and do it 3 years back. So really, there's no pressure timeline, and I would recommend just going ahead with your current taxes, getting them over the line, and then we can always, once that's been wrapped up, we can always then go back and just clean up what was left behind. So, yeah, that's it from me. Once again, I want to thank Melanie together with the team from the Western Cape Intellectual Disability Organization and my partner, Yura Brett, who put this together. And I'm going to look at the Q&A at the moment. Um, Before I start the Q&A, I just want to mention I'm not going to get to all the questions. I'm going to go to the questions that are likely relevant for most people in the crowd. And as mentioned, there's a team you're welcome to engage with. You're welcome to ask questions and just get whatever information you're looking for. So if I do miss out your question, please I do apologize in advance. But you're welcome to reach out to anyone on the team and they'll be happy to assist you. Okay. Here we go. So the first question is a very relevant question. Is there a certain amount that you must earn in order to get a disability rebate? It's a brilliant question, and the answer to that question is as follows: that you can never claim back more tax than you've paid. So are if if you are a minimal earner, so already there's many tax benefits that are already there. So for example, your first 17,000 Rand of PAYE you get back in your tax return. So that's already 17,000 Rand claimed. Then then because there's a medical rebate already, and as mentioned, the lower you earn, the more SARS give you back. You can get up to 25% of your medical spend. So now 25% jumping to 33%, if you're a low earner, often isn't that much. And therefore, this whole exercise can often become a bit too strenuous for the outcome. And therefore, what we normally say is, that where we've seen people get refunds is normally when they normally within the 23,000 Rand and up earning bracket. And once again, it also depends on how much you're spending on your medical spend. So it is a bit of a tricky question, but by law there isn't a limitation, but in practicality, because you're already getting back a massive rebate as a low earner, it often doesn't pay off. Okay, another question. Will SARS regard autoimmune disease as a disability? Um, Once again, I can't give I'm no medical professional, so I can only say I would 100% think it would, and a medical professional must just sign off on that. Because someone with an autoimmune disease, at least the people that I know who are navigating autoimmune disease, they are definitely limited in their day-to-day functioning, can't walk long distances, and are definitely limited. And an important point within that is that any natural medication or homeopathic medication can also be claimed and is also viewed as a medical spend. Okay, non-verbal child, definitely you can definitely claim under that. And then once again, sometimes it can go under intellectual, sometimes it can go under communication. It's important that if it goes under communication, then you get a speech therapist to sign that off. And if you go under intellectual, then a speech therapist can sometimes be rejected, although if you only have a speech therapist, then it's still worth trying that. Okay. Um, okay, I can see how there's a question. Um, I really do need to take that time uh, to educate myself on the medical conditions because there's a word here I can't even read. Sorry, I am quite honest. Sorry. Um, but the way that the condition's been described, there's a definitely would qualify. But I'm not going to try to read the word and embarrass myself. Okay. Um, all right. Um, okay. ADHD. Oh my word. This is like, a lot of my videos online, they say ADHD does qualify. And then I get comments. My medical professional says it doesn't qualify. Does it qualify? Doesn't it qualify? Once again, controversial. It does depend on how badly a person is affected in their day-to-day life. Like, I know, you know, I know some people with ADHD and they pop a pill and everything's fine and no one would even know. And then you get the people which are ADHD, they pop a pill and now they, last them till 2 p.m. and they get edgy after 2 p.m. and they can't attend the meeting and they can't sit in classroom and they can't do homework. That would qualify. So, in this sort of case, if your medical professional doesn't want to sign it off, there are other medical professionals and medical organizations that we do work with that we can refer you to who are more likely to sign if the child or the person does meet the condition. Okay. Um, Rheumatoid arthritis 100% would qualify. Where do you get these forms to complete? And can a GP sign it off? So, um, so the answer to that is you can get the form on, I think you can just Google SARS disability form, and you can get the form off the internet. Uh, yeah, and then a GP can sign, but we have seen that oftentimes claims are rejected by a GP, especially when they in the mental health and also when they're in the intellectual, but less so in the intellectual, and even sometimes in physical, they sometimes are rejected. By law, SARS should not be rejecting a GP because the law is that any person who's got any medical professional has got a right to comment on the medical condition is allowed to sign off. And I've actually noticed that there's a difference between Western Cape um, Western Cape taxpayers and Joburg taxpayers. Cape taxpayers in the SARS officers there are more strict on GPs as opposed to the Joburg officers. And even in Joburg, I've seen the difference between Alberton and the other tax officers, the other SARS officers. So it really depends on which desk your claim falls on, and that's really a rule for. Um, are going to be a little bit controversial again. That's really a rule for all matters in tax. It really depends on which officer falls on and which desk in the officer falls on because no one really there is keeping to a textbook. So, yeah, at least in my experience. Okay. Um, here we go. Uh, okay. Um, Can a mom claim under Section 6A and dad under Section 6B? It's a little bit complex. Sometimes you do the claim in both names, but I'd need to see the full scenario to give my full financial diagnosis. Okay. My son is 18 years old. Can that be claimed 100%? There's no age limitation for the person with the disability, and yeah, 100% can be claimed. Starting age. So the starting age is when a child's limited in their day-to-day functioning. Whenever that starts, I actually had a newborn last week Sunday. So yeah, like you won't see any disability for the first year, and the child won't be limited. So like really, I would say from when these signs are first noticeable, that's when the child's really first being limited. But in the physical. That could even be from newborn. Okay. For the travel expenses, school. If a school is less than 10 kilometers from home, but in the opposite direction from our place of work. Would that qualify? What I would say is, you should always put in your best claim to SARS. SARS can then reject it and say, no, sorry, the law is 10 kilometers. But will they come back and say that? It's hard to know. So it's worth a try, but it is important to note that they may reject it because you're not 10 kilometers from your home, even though that is opposite direction from your work. They may not acknowledge that. Okay. Does SARS automatically calculate the medical aid contributions? They definitely should, but always important to double check that. There can be mistakes between, the medical aid schemes are feeding the information to SARS, but there can be mistakes and definitely should be looked into. Okay, if someone submitted already, not to worry, you can always reopen the tax return and just fix it up. Okay, how do our fees work? So it's on success, and the client keeps 80%, and we charge 20% of the success. Okay. Um, here we go. 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Just looking for like the last very, very relevant question that applies to many. And once again, I know that there are many relevant questions which I may have missed, so please just reach out to anyone on the team and I'll be happy to answer. Okay. 1 second. Sorry, there's so many good questions here. Um, okay, um, let's end off with this question. Um, I'll sandwich a few questions into one, yeah? And that is, there's a lot of questions regarding, does a specific medical condition qualify? So, diabetes type 1, I saw a certain case of cancer, a certain case of apraxia. The basic, the basic, the basic idea is that um, the basic idea is that if a person is being limited in their day-to-day life, you should definitely not be presumptuous. Think good, it'll be good, and just put in your best claim. Take the SARS form to a doctor. Let the doctor tell you it doesn't qualify. Don't make those decisions for yourself, because at the end of the day, if the doctor does deem it to qualify, then that would mean significant financial relief. Yeah, so that's it from me. Um, Melanie, is there anything that you think that uh, should be added, can be added?
I can't think of anything offhand, but I'm sure there are going to be many questions.
Okay.
So
They're welcome to reach out
perhaps you'll be
directly.
hearing from us a little bit later. Thank you. That was,
Okay.
I wish I'd known that many years ago, but it's great. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing all of that.
We can help you 3 years back, so but that's about as far as we can go. Okay, thank you, parents.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me time and listening to something that I'm so passionate about. For those of you whose children are sleeping, wishing you a good night. For those of you whose children are still awake, wishing you good luck.
And thank you, and wishing you a good night's sleep with your newborn.
Oh, it's been amazing to me. I hope it continues.
Well, thank
Okay.
you everyone very much for dialing in. And remember, if you want to hop on over to our website, you can find us at www.wcfid.coza, where you can learn more about what we do. And we hope to see some of you either contacting us or signing up as members. Thank you, Dory.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.